Hello and welcome back to On Volume 6. Today we're presented with a blank canvas, and we're going to use that space to talk about the objective personality system and psychological types as conventionally known through orthodox Jungian theory. So right now we're talking about theory, we're talking about psychological types, we're talking about common notation versus formal notation. So let's start writing this out. What are we talking about? We're talking about Jungian psychological types. What are we talking about? So what are we talking about? We're talking about objective personality and Jungian psychological types. So let's write that out. Okay, so right now what are we talking about? We're talking about 1, Jungian theory, and 2, objective personality theory. So now we're zooming out a little bit, and we're going to change colors, and we're going to see what about this entry. Okay, so what's 3 and 4? 3 and 4 is the difference between a psychological function and a psychological type. Okay, so now we're talking about a psychological function and a psychological type. What is the similarity and the difference between these different modes of operation? But let's zoom back out. What are we talking about? We're talking about Jungian theory and objective personality theory. We're talking about the difference between a psychological function versus a psychological type. Because these are not the same things and they mean different things. But if you consider one thing to be a thing and another thing to be a different thing, that's when we start bringing up different language, different words. So let's go back over to what we're talking about and let's draw an arrow to Jungian theory. Okay, if we're over here and we're just shooting it, then in terms of Jungian theory, we start. Well, this is where the theory really starts. We start with pause. Okay, so to be frank with you, I have no idea how to start this series. This series is one that's been on my mind for a long time. It's called On Volume 6 for a reason. And it's like, what are we talking about? We're talking about Jungian theory in terms of psychological types, and we're talking about objective personality theory in terms of psychological types. But in order to get there, we're talking about psychological functions versus a psychological type. But it's like, how do you even begin? Where do you want to begin? I personally begin with On Volume 6, which is the title of this channel, which means we're talking about the collected work of Carl Gustav Jung, specifically the 6th volume in his body of work, in terms of the collected works as published. But the better translation is the psychology of individuation. So I think, how do I start here? This is one thing that I was going to start with. I don't know if you can see these, but some of those are the functions that I've what does it mean? Those were title first content. So what does that mean? That means that the content was title first, so I just wrote it out as a title. And I thought, okay, to what extent can this be useful? And so I'm gonna read off some of these. One is how the objective personality framework built on top of Jungian theory. How the objective personality framework built on top of Jungian theory. 2. At least 3 dimensions of the objective personality framework / system typology. Next, objective personality theory and introduction to OPS intellectual property innovation. Large language models do not yet understand psychological types yet. If you are studying psychological types, start with the Helton Goodwin Baines translation first. Learning objective personality the long way around. Objective personality, theory, structure, and applications/practice. Psychological functions as ontological primitives. Judging and perceiving as the blast and consume axis. Why would I think that you need to understand something? Why would I think that you need to understand something? Myers-Briggs, de Persang, and the blast axis and the consume axis. Why Chinese machine learning scientists should model the objective personality system for LLMs, written in Mandarin. Title first, why Chinese machine learning scientists should model the objective personality system for LLMs, written in Mandarin. Using animal function temperaments to help you visualize psychological functions within the objective personality framework. Is the modality a new attitude orientation? Is the modality a new attitude orientation? Where I started in terms of visualizing an objective personality system type. 512. So for me, I start with common notation versus formal notation. And that's where we're going to pick things up in our next entry. Okay, so when we pick this back up, we'll jump into psychological types, Jungian theory, objective personality theory, psychological function versus psychological types, and common notation and formal notation. Until next time.